Welcome from Chicago, the UK, and all around the world. It's Jonathan Hoenig and James Valliant with the Ayn Rand Center UK. You're on the Daily Objective, and we're delighted you're with us. Now, imagine it was, I don't know, 200 some days ago. It was last October, and you were with your friends. You decided to go to a concert and dance a little bit, party a little bit, have some fun with your friends. And you were brutally taken. You watched your friends get massacred, many of them get massacred in front of your eyes. You got swept away, beaten up, perhaps raped, certainly tortured psychologically and physically, and were held for 200 plus days as a hostage somewhere, who knows, in Gaza, in Palestine. Well, the IDF knows. And last Saturday, an amazing, unbelievable raid took place in which four hostages, Israeli hostages, were freed with this incredible rescue mission. Now, you're probably hearing some reports of a massacre, an IDF massacre, and there's been reports of hundreds and hundreds of Palestinians killed. Now, you also hopefully have heard that one IDF soldier was also killed in this process. We're going to unpack the entire story, share some of the incredible video, and hopefully give you a moral and philosophical perspective from Ayn Rand's view, all right here today on the Daily Objective. With me, thankfully, is a real expert and a scholar, James Valliant. Many books on objectivism and ideas. So, James, it's always great to be with you, one of the most passionate voices in the movement today.
Well, thank you. My gosh, for those kind words. And you are awesome, sir. I think this is a day for our passion to come out. I think this is a time when we can be happy. The one sad part was the IDF soldier who died in all of this. But what a breathtakingly competent, surgical. I mean, to call it a massacre, you're right. I looked at the NBC news site this morning, and they said it's one of the most brutal and deadly days in for Palestinians today. They had a picture of a Palestinian mother mourning over her baby who allegedly got killed in all this, and the fact that hostages were freed and that they were the people who were killed were the people holding these people hostage, surrounding these people, that protecting the Palestinian Hamas, in effect, from get to these people, protecting Israel from getting to these people. It's absolutely disgusting. But when you look at how surgical it was, to call it a massacre is absolutely insane. They had to have a couple of layers of completely surrounding this perimeter. They had to use multiple sources of intelligence, including, I'm
They
happy
knew
to say,
exactly
American
they
intelligence.
exactly where these people were, down to literally the room, the apartment. As you said, multiple types of intelligence. They didn't just come. We're going to show the tape, but they didn't just bomb the area, comes in with guns blazing, and say shooting everyone in sight, as they certainly could. They had the firepower. In fact, I read that the IDF team had practiced this with kind of scale mock-ups of the entire compound, where these, keep in mind, hostages are being held. These are people who are at a concert, not in an army uniform, not wielding weapons, kids out there just enjoying a concert.
A
Grip.
peace concert, a peace concert. People were there on dates. People were there with groups of friends. Some of them were, religiously conservative. Some of them were more secular. Some of them were pro peace with Palestine. Some of them they might have wanted to think that through, and they may think it through now if they survived. And some of them were, more hawkish. It didn't matter what your ideas were. It didn't matter what your religious views were. You were a Jew. You were a Jew at a peaceful concert with your friends or your date. And so what they're going to do is they're going to come in, kidnap a bunch, kill dozens upon dozens, torture, rape, twist tie at the concert. They twist tied people together so that your friend or your partner would know what they were doing as they're raping and killing the person who was with you. Uh, it was brutal what happened. It was absolutely brutal. They had to in order to pull this off, they had to, like I say, have layers of the perimeter surrounded 360 degrees. They have to have distracting fire coming in from different directions so that Hamas wouldn't know what was going on. And the people protecting these hostages would, because of course the fear is immediately we know that they're trying to take back the hostages. So let's just kill the hostages. And
And they do that. They do that all the time. No
they
respect
do.
for life
I'm
at
afraid,
all.
I'm actually afraid well, I don't know. They say that 40 of the hostages are dead already, and it's bodies only that would be getting back. But I don't know how many have died, how many were killed in revenge for this, for example, by these monsters. But of course, that's the risk we're taking. Two different units of the Israeli police that are experts in coming in and taking care of hostages were also involved, and they're deployed as they come in to specifically protect the people in the places where the hostages are and extracting them alive and getting them out. And it's getting them out where there was suddenly one of the vehicles gets stopped, and that's what causes suddenly the Palestinians to bring down the fire. And the only real firepower Israel used was in response to that. So this was a magnificent, not since the raid on Entebbe have I even heard in my lifetime of a precision military operation so successful, so dramatically well done that all one can do is stand in awe at their capacity to do this.
Let's roll the tape. We can either of us can stop it if we want, but this gives you, as I was telling Jim before we started, I grew up hearing about the raid on Entebbe, in which hostages were saved, and actually Bibi Netanyahu's older brother was killed in that raid. He was the only Israeli casualty in that. It wasn't a raid; it was a rescue mission, and we didn't have dash cam of that. We didn't have a body cam of that. So let's roll this incredible tape and thank the IDF and all of the brave soldiers who made this happen.
כנס, אחד איתי. עברית, הם פה כולם. הנה, פה. שם. אנדרי. שלוש שונים. הכל בסדר, אני מחלץ אתכם כאילו רגועים. יש.
Look at that. You can't help but get a little choked up. I mean, these guys have been held for hundreds of days, and here, like, they're finally rescued, and it's like that's that moment. It's like it's unbelievable.
If you don't have tears of joy starting to come into the corners of your eyes, I don't know if you're human or not. Because it was two different locations. It was one location where the three guys were held, and a different location where Noah, who's sort of been the face of this from the beginning, was being held and enslaved, mind you, held and enslaved by the people there in that home. No question about it. At first, she didn't even know, but think of it. It's two different buildings where they
Right.
knew there were
At
hostages,
the
had to
same time.
protect them, and they came out unharmed. Unbelievable success. Another thing that choked me up is when Noah was being reunited with her family. That was really powerful. Or when Netanyahu, we've been critical sometimes of Netanyahu here, but one really beautiful moment was when Noah was hugging Bibi, and she said, "I haven't heard Hebrew in such a long time." She'd only heard Arabic for the last 7 months. And just hearing her own language, just hearing other voices was a moving thing to her. I mean, again, the tears start forming in my eyes when I think of that. Thank goodness for the competence of the Israeli military and police in this coordinated, difficult effort, really.
Now, Hamas has reported all of these casualties. Now, as I understand it, they don't actually differentiate between civilian casualties and military casualties. And now we know why, because there is no differentiation. And, this apartment, this place where, Jim, you called it a concentration camp, and that's exactly what it is. They're living every single moment in fear of their life. The tape from the last couple of weeks that sticks with me is that interview with one of these little monsters they caught, and he talked about his father raped a woman. He and his friend had a turn, the uncle had a turn, and then the father just shot this woman dead. And that could have been certainly Noah, and it could have been these men either. Could have been these men who could have been. So every day is a
Oh no,
concentration camp.
they sexually assaulted men and women. They mutilated men and women and
And,
children
and that
as they
is
were doing
no civil. There's not no civilian location. Those people are all military targets, and I would have been fine had the military gone in and shot everyone within a 5 block vicinity of that because they all knew. And the moment they had the
it.
opportunity, they all opened fire on Israel.
Exactly right. They had to know. They knew they were part of the protections. They had their own protections ring around and of course, this we can only presume with the other hot. What a strange refugee camp. We go into these buildings. It's clear these people are living in structures,
Refuge camp,
built
yeah.
structures. They're not in some starving refugee camp, by the way. And you're right. Oh boy, it's amazing to me how the media is just now catching on to the idea that Hamas wants their own civilians dead. That's been their policy since before October 7th. It was their policy
Hospitals,
on.
in the schools.
So the headline this morning in the Wall Street Journal is Hamas leaders gambit to use civilian deaths. And they're using the quote now, oh, yes, we're willing to sacrifice these martyrs. Bullshit. This has been their policy all along. The Western media has covered this up all along, and the media is just now waking up to the fact that this is intentional Hamas policy to kill their own civilians.
Well,
Welcome to the party, guys.
I've been hearing for months about all the innocent Palestinians. This is just, what about all the innocent Palestinians? Is Israel was trying to drive these hostages out to meet the chopper. The truck got broken down, and then somewhere all these innocent Palestinians opened fire with a barrage of not just small arms. And imagine it's you or me, Jim, or someone that we love. You want your government to bring out every weapon available, save your goddamn life. And I look at that video and I think there's 5 American hostages being held. Why aren't the Americans pulling that shit off? Why aren't they doing that? Why aren't they kicking in the doors and rescuing our people as they should? And
Well, I think of American rescue efforts. I think of the botched attempt by President Carter in 1979 to get the diplomatic hostages that the Iranians had taken when they'd first taken over the government and seized in an open act of war the U.S. diplomatic mission and held those hostages for so long. That was a botched effort. Talk about a contrast to Entebbe in this. That's what America. That's American competence in this regard. It's pretty pathetic. Yeah, it should be a moment where everyone cheers. Hamas releases their number 274 or something, over 270. They claim are dead. IDF, Israel says, no, it's more like 100 or less. Who are you going to trust here, my friends? And forget the numbers here. Whichever it was, whether it was 90 or 274 or 10 times that number, I would be happy and celebrating today. It is not a question of math. It's a question of who was doing the holding, who did the initiation of the violence here.
And Israel was driving out. They weren't a threat at that point. They weren't driving out, shooting at people indiscriminately. They were trying to book it out to get out. And when you start shooting at someone, you are no longer an innocent civilian. It's like you are now an absolute target. You're making yourself a target. And Hamas and the Palestinians have this, this tendency. It seems like they start a war, they commit an act of war, and then get retaliated against, and they say, "Oh, I'm a victim. I'm a victim of justice. Of justice." I don't even know, Jim. If you this rescue is certainly an act of justice in the sense that these people were freed, but I don't know if justice has been served on those who committed this.
No, indeed, a terrible injustice is being done in that Israel is spending so much of their effort in protecting Palestinian lives in protecting. It's not their obligation. Hamas's intentional policy is to have their own civilians die. That's why they never use, one of the things I read about, that these Israelis were not in uniform when they did this rescue operation. And I actually read in one of the reports, how dare Israel go in there without uniform? I heard, we heard from one of the newscasters, why didn't they, usually Israel tells the civilians to get out. Was there any prior warning? So we're supposed to give a prior warning before a surprise rescue mission, and Israel is supposed to wear uniforms during a surprise rescue mission. When Hamas never uses uniforms,
yeah,
never even in any combat situation to protect their own people. So it's absolutely vile the one-way street this morality goes. The sole function of government is to protect. Harry Binswanger had a great way of putting it the other day. A rights violation is an initiation of force. You have a right to do anything that isn't an initiation of coercion in some way. That's what rights are by definition. So the sole function of government is to do exactly what you said, to at all costs protect their own citizens' safety and lives. That's the first order of their business. The sole function is to protect us from the physical initiation of force. I can think of no more horrific initiation of force than they were subjected to on October 7th. And the response is not to, hey, we've also got to protect the Palestinian population. No, your job is to protect the Israeli population. Your job is not to protect the aggressors who took these innocent hostages. It is, as we objectivists know, the function of government is to protect rights, to make sure and ensure that human interaction is voluntary and peaceful. That's it. As long as no one's coercing anyone, they're free. But when coercion does happen, and I cannot imagine aggressive force more ugly and aggressive than this, then the response has to be swift and overwhelming and decisive. Ayn Rand said it, and it is a matter of justice. But we live in a time of deep moral confusion. It is an age, as Ayn Rand said, of moral crisis. There's no question about it. People do not have a clear view of what morality consists of. And that confusion is precisely, as we've said on this channel many times, what Hamas and all of their defenders in the Western media exploit so horribly.
You alluded to the fact that reports are that basically the IDF soldiers, these specialists, these true commandos, were dressed up like Palestinian, interlopers, whatever it is. I mean, I'd say savages, but let's say locals, and just Fauda shit, James Bond shit, smart, meant to minimize casualties to everyone, to the hostages. As I said, they have the firepower. They could have gone in and killed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. It's only when they were sitting ducks that they had to really kill people, and that was their force. Again, Jim, first of all, thank you, Gail. Thank you, Shazbot. Very generous from both of you. Shazbot says he's quoting Star Trek. Were you a Star Trek guy? It wasn't. It was more of a Battlestar Galactica guy myself, but he says there are no civilians among the Borg, quoting Commander Riker.
Ooh, the Borg are a collectivist society in which they're all connected intellectually to a single collective mind, you see. And the analogy here is obviously to collectivism. Yeah, there's something to what you say there. They're very powerful. These people are all connected to the hive mind. They are connected to the queen bee, who is actually the only one who does any thinking for the entire community. They will die willingly. Now, these are women who are willing to bear children just so they can be martyrs in the glorious cause of killing Jews and destroying Israel. And that's the attitude. That's the mentality. These people are brainwashed. Now, human beings are individuals with free will and minds. We're not Borg implanted with things implanted into our brains where we have to obey the great collective. So this is worse than the Borg. Individual Borg actually were comparatively innocent compared to nearly every Palestinian in Gaza today over the age of, say, 12. Yes.
Thank you for that, Shazbot. Thank you, Bonnie, for your contribution. Thank you, Christopher, for your contribution. Thank you, Christian Klein. He says, an absolutely heroic mission, but I still ask myself, at what point does a rescue mission become so risky a rationally selfish man could not volunteer for it, but only an altruist. You know, I don't know the answer of that.
The
That we've
soldiers
talked.
will do what they want to. The soldiers, they're so committed to what they're doing. They will listen to. They will do what they're told if they think it's worth it. You know who's responsible here are the generals, the war cabinet, Netanyahu himself, the people who make the final calls, and they are doing a very careful thing here. Yes, it's going to risk IDF lives. IDF soldier was killed here. An IDF
Yeah,
soldier was killed here. But I'll bet you if you asked IDF soldiers, yeah, I'll risk my life if it means we can get out hostages, they're willing to do that. That's the kind of heroes these guys are. And it's the policymakers who have to make this careful decision. Frankly, from my perspective, when we are going back after these Hamas monsters, not a single Israeli soldier should be risked if it means we can take out their capacity. Now, this is a special operations thing, so maybe our risk calculation changes a bit there. But I'm an atheist. God bless IDF soldiers who are willing to risk their lives to save innocent lives and kill terrorists. God bless them all. I'm an atheist.
I mean, we always talk about Jim, Rand's seminal essay, The Purpose of Government, the nature of government, excuse me. Like, what is the role of government? Like, I don't, it's like government is the only one that if you're being held hostage can come get you, it can come save you. It's not going to be a band of your friends, just, and
Not my friend.
yeah, I mean, like you are being held by force.
Right.
And to see, Israel, look, were they asleep on the job on October 7th? Like, look what they're up against. They're up against absolute savages, quoting Ayn Rand and just quoting reality of look at how these people treat other human beings. They happily behead them, happily, as you said, rape and sexually abuse them. Went in this in a music festival and have massacred people, held them for years. Iron Meerkat, thank you for your contribution. PC, thank you for your contribution. Points out that 80% of Palestinians support Hamas. And then the 20% who do are victims, maybe.
Maybe they may support a worse or a different terrorist
Yeah,
group.
like a worse version.
Hamas isn't the only one there. I know they're very popular among Palestinians right now because Hamas did October
And
7th. So that's
my
increased
hope,
their popularity. Think
my
about
hope
that.
is that if there was 200 people killed from shooting at these Israelis trying to escape, these Israelis were not there shooting everyone. They were driving out of town, trying defensive. And if Israel did, in retaliation or in self-defense, kill 200, I hope all those families start to think, gee, maybe we shouldn't be supporting Hamas. Maybe
Hmm,
we should, maybe it's time for a change. Maybe this isn't the road to go down. Like, that's
right.
my hope is, can
No,
some
Ayn Rand
lessons
got so
learned?
much grief back in the 70s for calling the dominant Arab culture savage. She used the word savage. And in defending Israel, she said, look, this is the beacon of civilization. And they're surrounded by a bunch of religious savages. She
Who
got so
haven't
much grief.
changed,
She
she
was
said, in
called
centuries, and they still haven't changed.
right. And boy, was she right. The behavior that you see from these people, just look at October 7th. And this is some 40, 50 years since Ayn Rand was saying things like that. Just look at how savage and monstrous it was. The mutilations, the burnings alive of children, mothers forced to watch their children getting tortured, children being forced to watch their mothers getting raped and tortured. Can you imagine anything more horrific? These people are monsters, and there's something sick, anti life. This is a death cult. It's mysticism, it's collectivism, it's altruism. And so that they're willing to martyr themselves for their cause, purely mystical. Once you've departed from reason, of course, these kind of atrocities are possible. That's what anything goes when you step away from reason. And you're going to be collectivist and tribalist. All of that kicks in, just as Ayn Rand perfectly described. And it is that culture itself that is the enemy here, people. Until and unless that culture changes, more October 7th will happen, are inevitable.
Well, for now, we are, as we said, we both got emotional kind of watching that video. You should watch it too. Then go watch like the Nova Music Festival video of the documentary and all this real time footage of, as James put it out, these like incredible atrocities. And if you were a victim, what would you want? You would be praying for these brave men and women from the IDF who kicked down the door. And, Nikos pointed this out on Twitter, like the fist bump is so clutch. It's just like, it's up there with, like, you remember the story in 9/11 of the guy who said, let's roll?
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
on a plane that was being hijacked, and he said, like, and it's not, I'm not equating, but I'm just saying, like, incredible clutch moments of heroism that, just take your breath away. So God
Does.
bless these men. And we're
Inspiring.
the biggest
Courage.
atheists you'll meet.
The courage to fight for life, the courage, the conceptual capacity to know that there are values worth risking your life for. Life itself. Life itself. Now, I will get all choked up when I think about this. These are people with principled commitment and a principled understanding of the value of life. And they're willing to risk that so that their world, their family can live in a condition of freedom. I am in awe.
And when you're taken, or when I'm taken, I want these guys to come in and shoot every fucking thing in their way to get me out. We are in the right. Israel are the victims here. And I was just delighted to see this and just salute them beyond words. As you said, I mean, Jim, there's going to be movies made of this. I think there's
Yes.
been 3 or 4 movies made of Entebbe, at least over the years.
Yes, I hope there are movies made of this, and I hope they don't take the perspective that, say, NBC or CNN took this morning on it, talking about this massacre and one of the most brutal and violent days, and with pictures of uh, Palestinian mothers who, in many cases, are eager to bear children just so they can be martyrs in the cause of killing Jews. The protests in New York that were happening over the last couple of days. I mean, they were holding up pro October 7th signs. They were going into the subways in Manhattan and said, "Are you a Zionist? Are you a Zionist? What? You're going to beat me up if I'm a Zionist?" And so these people are threatening pro Hamas, violent, pro terrorism thugs of the most savage kind. Only they're here in Western countries like the UK and the United States, and mostly coming from universities. Something to be thinking about, folks.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we know that I think the Middle East is fed. There's a kind of a back and forth feeding of the Middle East feeds off the intellectual support and financial support in many cases of Western intellectuals, and they feed off the brutality that it seems like many in the Middle East are able to uh, uh, enact on their behalf, perhaps. I mean, there's tape this week of a guy in Central or in Madison's Washington Square Park saying something like, Hitler was right. He should have wiped out all you guys.
Right, right. They have it on tape. They have it on tape. These people are saying Hitler obviously missed a bunch of you. And he's saying it on tape.
I just
We are living in morally perverse times when that is given equal play, and that is somehow a dominant idea out there that university educated people can come out and actually utter. I never thought I'd live to hear it in my lifetime, but it's there, folks. It really is.
Thank you equal to reality. It says Palestine is the home of the Sith. Would you agree with that one? I don't know. This whole Star Wars jargon again. Battlestar Galactica. That's really my jam. So the Star Wars thing is, I
Sith
don't.
is a Star Wars thing. The baddies, the supernatural baddies in Star Wars are the Sith Order, the evil Emperor. I wouldn't, when doing things like that, they are the baddies. But in claiming that it's some kind of mysticism, well, they're mystically motivated. But evil doesn't have this power of the dark Sith. They're actually incompetence. What
Yes.
it takes is moral backbone. We don't need to fight off the emperor's, powerful thunderbolt zaps or something. The evil is not really powerful. These guys can be taken out. If people in Israel and America develop some moral clarity and resolve, these monsters can be taken out. They don't have some great evil Sith force behind them. It would be the only point I'd make.
Isn't it what Rand said about 1984? Is so how can such a totalitarian society in which man's mind is and people's rights are violated, how can they come up with anything? Who's going to, and
We'll be
isn't that
back to the candle in short order, right?
isn't that exactly what Gaza really is? I mean, it's like,
Yes.
compared to Israel, it's like, so do yourself a favor, watch this video. Thank you to all who've contributed to us. We are blowing up in terms of a viewership. We are among the few rational. Well, I shouldn't say that. I didn't mean to say that. What I meant is we are dramatically increasing in terms of viewership. We are the only moral voice on this issue that I'm aware of, one of the few moral voices with true experts of objectivism like James Valliant and so many others. We need you to be part of what we're doing. So become even a YouTube subscriber. It's $5 a month, £5 a month. You're changing minds, you're changing lives, and improving the world. So we'll stay tuned because the reality show is coming up in 3, 2,